What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and today we are going to go over a competitive version for Phantom Knights. Yes, the deck is starting to pick up a little bit of heat, a little bit of tension, because it can produce some incredible boards. And right now, with the format slightly open ajar a little bit, a deck like Phantom Knights can certainly take advantage. So, without further ado, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you do not miss out on any more upcoming content from the channel. With all of that out of the way, let's dive straight into the deck list and then the rest of the cards in full depth and detail, followed by a very simple 2-card combo to get you everything you're going to need to get started with competitive Phantom Knights. So for the monsters we play triple scales alongside double boots, double cloak and a single glove alongside a single greaves. We've then got triple tour guide, one graph, one libic, one seer, one danger jackalope, one danger snake, one psychic wielder and then one psychic tracker alongside triple ash blossom, double Ghost Ogre, and then one Red Eyes and one Dark Magician. For the spells, we're playing triple Pot of Prosperity alongside triple Forbidden Droplets, one Red Eyes Fusion, one Emergency Teleport, one Reinforcement of the Army, one Monster Reborn, and one Phantom Knights Rank Up Magic Force. For the traps, we've got triple Fogblade, one Phantom Knights of Shade Breeding, and one Phantom Knights Wings. For the extra deck, we are playing one Predaplant Verte Anaconda alongside one Cherubini Ibon Angel of the Burning Abyss, as well as one Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche and one Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess. We then move into our fusion monster of being Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and then everything else is XYZs with double Phantom Knights of Breaksword, one Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon, Dark Rebellion XYZ Requiem Dragon, a Arc Rebellion XYZ Dragon, and then of course we have Raiders Knight, Evil Swan Nightmare, Time Thief Redoer, Divine Arsenal AA Zeus, and the one Legionnaire the Sea Dragon. So let's go over the cards in depth. We're going to start off with the Mac Daddy, the most recent Phantom Knight main deck monster, and that is of course Torn Scales. Now what makes this card so incredibly good is the fact that he is pretty much everything you need. In the equivalence of Unizombie is to zombies, this card is for Phantom Knights in the sense that it's technically like a Foolish Burial, it's technically a discard, it also has the recursion effect in grave, it pretty much does everything the deck needs. So you discard one card, send one Phantom Knights card from your deck to the graveyard, except itself. If another Phantom Knights card in your graveyard is banished while this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. Only use each effect of the Phantom Knights of Torn Scale once per turn. So obviously straight from that effect, yes you do need to discard a card, but if that card in the hand you're discarding is like a Fogblade or a Wings, you're gaining graveyard advantage. He's then going to be able to send either a Fogblade or of course a Wings or a Gloves, a Boots, a Cloak, anything you need to the graveyard to then set up your future plays. And just by sending Cloak, straight away you can trigger his secondary effect once he hits the graveyard by banishing Cloak, search you out Boots, special on this back. Straight away you have the ability for an instant rank 3, more times than not being Breaksword, which is why this card is so centered on everything it does and why it is so important and powerful. The card is incredibly useful, incredibly good, it's why it's a free of, and it's also why it is now starting to rise in price, because Phantom Knights actually have a lot of potential. I mentioned this way before when Torn Scales first came out. Luckily I picked up a couple of mine for like 25 quid each, I don't think I paid too much for them, and they're definitely an incredibly good card, an incredibly good deck, and definitely undervalued in my opinion. We've then got double Silent Boots. Now, most of you should know what Boots does by Time Through Walkers and everything like that, but if you control a Phantom Knights monster, you can special summon this card from the hand. Only special summon it once per turn this way. You can banish this card from the graveyard, add one Phantom Knights spell or trap from your deck to your hand. you can only use this effect once per turn. So keep in mind that when it specifically says add 1 Phantom Knight spell or trap, and then the other one, which is Cloak, says add 1 the Phantom Knights. This one can add a card that says the in it, but Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak can't add something that doesn't have the in it. So very specific, but it's something to keep in mind of. Speaking of, we play double Cloak as well. 2s are more than enough. I don't really want to see these cards in my hand. I actually want them to be sent to graveyard. I want to get them into the graveyard more times than not, because that's when they're going to provide full advantage. And the only time I want boots in my hand is when I specifically searched it, because throughout my combo I am going to do that. So opening it up in my hand isn't the end of the world, but it's just not what I want to see. Cloak is, if this card is in the tap position, you type 1 dark monster on the field, change that card to defense position, and if you do, that monster gains 800 attack and defense until the end of your opponent's turn. Not really ever going to use that. But what you are going to do is you can banish this card from the graveyard, add 1 the Phantom Knights card from your deck to your hand, accept itself, and you only use each effect once per turn. So, of course, it can add Torn Scales, it can add the Silent Boots, but it can't add something. Let me just find the exact example. It can't add Fogblade, because Fogblade or Wings doesn't have the at the start. Very, very minor, but it makes a huge difference. For the other Phantom Knights, we play the 1 Greaves and the 1 Gloves. Now, Gloves is one of the cards that you want to be sending more times than not. It's one of the first cards you'll probably send coming off a Torn Scale. Purely because if this card is... you can banish this card from the graveyard, send 1 Phantom Knights card from your deck to your graveyard. So, ideally, if you've already got Scales in the graveyard, you banish Gloves, which would trigger Scales effect on a separate chain anyway, but then you're going to send, like, Fogblade, or you're going to send Boots, or Cloak, or anything... to pretty much set yourself going further forward from that one. On top of that, a Dark XYZ monster that was summoned using this card on the field as material gains the effect that it gives an additional 1000 attack, which sometimes is quite relevant. Now, Stained Greaves is another really important card. It's a brand new one that came out in Phantom Rage. And what it allows you to do is, if a Phantom Knight monster or monsters is special summoned to your field, except during the damage step, you get to special summon this card from the hand for free. And then you can increase this card's level by 1. Now, keep in mind, it's very important that it says you can. So you can choose to make him a level 4 if you're going for a rank 4 play, or you keep him as a level 3, and that way it allows you to make your rank 3 plays as well. You can banish this card from the graveyard to special summon 1 the Phantom Knight monster from your hand, except himself. Then you can increase its level by 1 again. So again, it's a you can effect. It does give you an additional extender if you open up, more so Cloak than anything else, or Cloak or Gloves, maybe even Scales, because Boots is going to summon itself anyway. So not only is it an extender itself, but it also helps instigate a secondary extender should you want to and should you open up to. Now, there is a 2-card combo that I'll show you at the end of the profile as well, as mentioned at the start, and it will allow you to build up the deck and kind of show you the routes that this deck does go, and why the deck is so powerful, why the deck is so important, and why there's a lot of hype around it right now. Then the most, well, I say most recent buff, this came off on the previous banners, but Tour Guide to 3 just incredibly increases the consistency of this deck. Because it allows you to add special summon any level 3 Fiend, that's where your Burning Abyss engine comes in. Now, in the past, it was Burning Abyss being supported by Phantom Knights. Now, it's Phantom Knights being supported by Burning Abyss, which is a nice swing around about, but it works really, really nicely. Tour Guide is the way it is. It's just so good. I think the only reason it isn't allowed to be at 3 is because there's so many cards that stop it, Veiler, Imperm, Ash, even Fogblade, that it wasn't really the end of the world. And that's where you've got to be careful with it, but... A lot of people see this as a choking point for the deck, but there's actually a lot of free extenders that you play in the deck that you just go, alright, fine, you stop that, but I can still make my Cherubini play, I can still make the plays I want to make, and it, you know, it's not as big of a deterrent or big of a Achilles heel as it once was. Speaking of the Burning Abyss cards, we do play the 1 Graf, the 1 Libic, and the 1 Seer. I think 99.999% of Phantom Knight decks will be playing this ratio, purely because all of them count as free extenders, and what you've got to keep in mind is all the Burning Abyss monsters share the same effect, that if you control a card that is not Burning Abyss, or a monster that is not Burning Abyss, they will self-destruct. The only times that you protect them is if they come off of Tour Guide because their effects are negated, or if Cherubini, Ibon Angel is pointing to them. Now, 9 out of 10, what you're going to do is you're going to Tour Guide into Graf, and link those two off to Cherubini, which will then let you, Graf will then trigger to summon you out Seer. Seer then becomes pointed to a Bon, so it doesn't nuke itself, and that allows you to continue your plays. And then once Seer goes to the graveyard to make Rusty Bardiche, it brings the link 2 back for you. So you're pretty much just recycling your graveyard fodder. The reason Limit is in here is purely because if it is sent to the graveyard, it lets you special summon one of them from your hand for pretty much free. So it's one of those fail safes. If you open up one of these two guys, this is a card you want to be sending off of your Cherubini, and that will then allow you to get the other piece out of your hand and then still continue to make your combos and the plays you want to make without hindering too much. Personally, I really like Farfar in the deck, but its relevance, because you're not dropping it during your opponent's turn, can become a little bit restricted and a little bit less relevant, but it's still an incredibly good card to consider. But we want to kind of keep the Burning Abyss to a minimum because obviously it is a Phantom Knight deck. Then for just our free extenders that are level 3s, we've got our Jackalope and Snake. Obviously Snake is a little bit more free than Jackalope because whether you discard this or not, it's coming to the board. The one good thing about Jackalope is if you summon it, you're getting a draw off of both of these correctly. If you don't, then Jackalope is going to search you out the snakes, and then it ultimately gives you a free extender anyway. So it gives you more to play with. They're both level 3s, they're both darks. If you really, really wanted to, we do play Pot of Prosperity, as you saw from the deck list at the start. But if you really, really wanted to, you can take out Pot of Prosperity for Allure of Darkness. It's not the end of the world, because you do actually have ways of not worrying about banishing all your stuff. Then for our other extenders, we do play the one tracker and the one wielder. Literally, if you control a level 3 other than itself, especially on this card from the hand, nice. And then this one is if you try another level 3 monster other than itself, again, special on this card from the hand. So all you're really trying to do with all these level 3 extenders is you're just trying to get into the Cherubini. Once you've got into Cherubini, because it's generic, just 2 level 3 monsters, you're then going to be aiming to get into your Breaksword because it's just 2 level 3 monsters as well, which is nice and generic. But you also have the ability for using Levianeer the Sea Dragon, and then you also have the ability of just going straight into a Verti Anaconda to make a Dragoon. And we all know how powerful Dragoon is right now. Technically, it is probably the best and it's the best, strongest extra deck boss monster that is easy to get out. It literally just requires 2 monsters. I don't think there's any boss monster that does what Dragoon does that only requires two monsters in general, 2 effect monsters technically. So you want to be able to not only back up your Rusty Bardiche and your Fog Blades, but you also want to be able to back up with your XYZ Dragons alongside your Dragoon as well. Then for the hand traps, because, you know, meta, you have to play hand traps. Triple Ash Blossom. This is literally only a hand trap, but it's probably the best generic one right now. And then double Ghost Ogre. Now, Ghost Ogre actually doubles up as 2 things for you. I'll keep in mind that both of these are level 3s and tuners. Less relevant for the tuner part, but more so for the level 3, so they could be used as a normal summon if you wanted to. But Ghost Ogre can actually become a free summon because we do play Emergency Teleport in the deck. And the reason we play Emergency Teleport in the deck is for the Psychic Tracker and the Psychic Wielder. But keep in mind, Ghost Ogre is also a Psychic, so it can become not only a hand trap, but it can become a free extender should you get to a point where you've already done your Tracker, you've already done your Wielder, but you open up E-Tele, then you just get a free summon from your deck at any point, and then straight away, because it's a level 3, it instigates your rank 3 plays of Breaksword, it instigates your plays of Link 2s. It's just crazy to kind of help get you started. Now, a lot of people play Ghost Bell, a lot of people play Imperms. Again, completely fine to put in. You would, in my opinion, adapt this deck to what you're going to face at locals. If you're planning to face, well, not that you plan to face, but if you expect to face a load of Bird Up, then that's when you're going to be looking at Kaijus, you're going to be looking into Imperms. I would personally not main deck Kaijus unless you know 100% all of your matchups are going to be Bird Ups. And you're going to always lose the dice roll, or choose to go second should you lose the dice roll. Other than that, that's why we go with stuff like Forbidden Droplet, because in my opinion, it's the best card that can go both first and second. The clearest alternative to it is Dark Rule or No More for going second if you want to hit multiple cards, or Imperm is the next best alternative option for going first and second. Then, of course, we've got the one Dark Magician and the one Red Eyes Black Dragon, because, of course, we are moving towards or aiming to go into Dragoon, because being able to back up your, like I said, your Rusties, your Fog Blades and Dragoon is mad. And it's going to get you probably the win. Like 9 times out of 10, you're going to get the win off the back of that. So that's it for the monsters. Let's move into the spells. So for just pure consistency purposes, we've got the triple Pot of Prosperity. Now, like I said, if you don't own these cards are incredibly expensive right now, then you can go, of course, to Allure of Darknesses. You do play a lot of Darks. The idea is you don't really want to be digging through your deck with Allure's Blind, which is why Prosperity is a little bit better, because you get to see what cards you want to choose. And then that's where it's a little bit better to kind of go, right, okay, I need my Extender, so I'm going to choose that, or I need my Starter, so I'm going to choose that. or you're just going to pretty much go, right, well, I don't want that Dark Magician, so that one's going back to the bottom. I don't want that Red Eyes, it's going back to the bottom. And that's why it's better, but at the end of the day, when you're faced between a $2 card and a like $70 card, if you don't have them, what are you going to go for? But if you want to be as competitive as possible, you want to have as consistent as possible, then Prosperity is, of course, going to be able to aid you with that. That's the exact same reason for Drop Clear. Obviously mentioned this before, that the clearest alternative or the nearest budget option to this is Imperm, and even that isn't as budget until the OCG get it as a common in the Cyber Star structure deck, and then we get Effect Veiler. But Dark Rule no more, or we are a 42 card deck, you can just cut these down to make 40 cards to make it even more consistent for you. But again, if you've got them, and keep in mind these are coming out in OTS 16, so a lot of people are actually trying to sell their secrets right now. So I think I saw someone today trying to sell it for 170 for a playset, which is actually pretty good. So if you can end up getting a playset for 150, I think it's well invested in, because in my opinion, it's such a unique card. Like literally, there's no card that can do both of both of what it provides, but there are cards that do one half or the other. So definitely worth it in my opinion. And then of course, Emergency Teleport, just a free extender. Reinforcement of the army, search out any of your Phantom Knights. Monster Reborn, free extender. Red Eyes Fusion, have to play it for Red Eyes, Dark Dragoon. So, and then Phantom Knights of Rank Up Magic. Again, you don't actually have to play this. This is, again, it's a 42 card deck. You can cut this out quite easily. But what I really like about this is it also gives you an ability that during your opponent's turn, if they're like, right, cool, I've got rid of all the negates off of the Requiem Dragon. You go, right, okay, I'm going to keep on doing stuff. Or I've got all the negates off of Nightmare, all of the negates off of Redoer, or I've negated Redoer or anything like that. You can just go, right, fine, flip this on them. That can then turn Redoer into the Art Rebellion or the Dark Requiem, and it gives you even more negates. Or if you've already got Dark Requiem on the board, it turns it into Art Rebellion, and Art Rebellion just shuts the entire board down. So it's just one of them little spicy cards that not a lot of people play, a lot of people forget about. People just chuck it to the side and go, right, okay, I don't need this anymore. That when you actually face someone and you flip this card on them, they're kind of like, exactly the way that I feel about Ghost Ogre right now. So a lot of people don't expect it to happen. They're all prepared for, right, he's about to flip a Fog Blade on me, or, oh, he's going to flip a Wings on me, and then you go, all right, cool, flip a Phantom Knights rank up, and they're like, what are you going to go into? And you're just going to go into, and they just don't see it coming, and that's what really catches them off guard. Into the traps, of course, Triple Fog Blade. To be totally honest, I think 2 is enough if you were like just planning to set and play. But what makes Fog Blade so good in this deck is the chances are you're actually going to open up one of these and you're going to want to discard it off of your scales, because ditching it off your scales gives you a Banish to Revive, which is really important. Not to mention Fog Blade is basically like an updated Fiendish Chain, searchable Fiendish Chain, and can be a real pain in the backside for your opponent to try and deal with. We've then got the Shade Brigandine. Now, the Shade Brigandine, again, is really important because what it does is it allows you to instigate your rank 4 plays. Now, if you wanted to, you could put something in the extra deck like an Umduct or a Link Spider, and what that will allow you to do is that will allow you to turn your Shade Brigandine and then kind of link climb into your Verte Anaconda. But the reason I haven't put that in here is because I'm only going to be using the Phantom Knight Shade Brigandine to go for my rank 4 plays. So I'm not going to set this if I don't have the rank 4 play on board. I'm not going to do this if I don't plan to go in the rank 4 play. But what is really nice is if you do go to the rank 4 play, you have the ability of going into a Redoer that will have a trap and a monster, which gives you a free bounce during your opponent's turn. Not to mention, if you rip a spell off the top of your opponent's deck, you're also going to get a nice little draw off of your opponent for pretty much free. And then, of course, we've got the Wings. Wings is just another card that you want to be sending to the graveyard more times than not for that free extender. Just being able to banish it to revive a Phantom Knight monster is incredibly important, but you've got to keep in mind that when that monster leaves the field, it does get banished. So you want to make sure you're overlaying with it, or it's a card you don't mind getting banished because you're going to bring it back with a Sea Dragon. Really up to you. Now, its actual effect is target face-on monster on the field and it gains 500 attack. And for the rest of this turn, that target, if it would be destroyed by battle or card effect, it is not destroyed. So it does give you a bit of nice protection. It's not continuous, so it can't then be chained to then get rid of it like Fogblade can. But it's just a nice little card that does give you a bit of protection, but 9 out of 10, you're going to want it in the graveyard to then banish it and do even more with. But that's it for the main deck list. Like I said, I love this deck. I think Phantom Knights are such a kind of a cool deck, and not being... Like, I think it kind of fell in the shadows of Burning Abyss, which is a big issue in that sense, because it was just literally like, okay, cool, but you're telling me all you're going to do for me is you're going to support my Burning Abyss plays. You're going to give me more level 3s in the graveyard for Burning Abyss. And now, the tables have turned and the deck is like, no, Burning Abyss is going to be my support engine. So, yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I really like it. It's a fun deck. And puts a lot of work in. Moving on to the extra deck, I'm going to blitz over this one because, yeah, Dragoon, Dragoon go Vertigo, brrr. It's boring, I get it, I know, but you have the ability to play one of the strongest cards in the format. You have to play it. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this card. I'm a Dark Magician player. I love this card. Like, for Dark Magicians, beautiful. If it said can only be someone in a Dark Magician deck, fine. The thing that makes this an issue for everyone is this card right here. Still a great card. You've got if you own it, play it. If you don't, fine. You actually take out 3 spots from your deck, put you down to a 39 card deck, and then you can take these 2 cards out of your extra deck and you can put in more rank 4s, you can put in IP, you can put in Nightmare Unicorn, and you can jazz it up a little bit. But you want to be as strong and as competitive as possible. This is why you're putting those cards in there. Coming off the back of that, the other Link 2 that we play is the Cherubini Ibon Angel of Burning Abyss. This is part of your combo, incredibly powerful. Now, obviously, if you don't have the ability, if you open up Red Eyes Fusion, for example, then these 2 are actually very, very easy banish fodders off of Prosperity, like, without even thinking about it, so that's nice. But Cherubini, you never want to banish. Of course, you never want to banish your Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. Like, that would just be foolish, people. Come on, foolish. Not in a good way. Yes, this is now back at 3, but ultimately there's no need to play it more than 3 because 1 can just get recycled from the graveyard and then still continue to do its effects. The fact if it could be used as link material, fine, you'd play loads of it, but it can't. It's a bit of a downside restriction, but it doesn't point to your opponent. It does everything it needs to do, so 1 is more than enough. The only other link monster we play is the one Appaloosa, just because it's very defensive. It's as simple as that. Like, you want to end your board on a Rusty plus an Appaloosa, and then you have the ability of either using your 2 monsters to go into the XYZ, or you have the ability to go into your Verte Dragoon. So again, it comes down to, do I have the life points to pay? Do I want to risk dropping my Verte? How do you want to do it? And it gives you a lot to play around with. The XYZs. Now, the XYZs is where it gets very, very fun, and this is where I really enjoy the deck. So we've got the one Levianeer, the Sea Dragon. You banishing so much, like you're banishing your cloak, you're banishing your boots, you're banishing the gloves, you're banishing your torn scales. So Levianeer, the Sea Dragon is just another way of bringing them back to then put them back into the graveyard, or bring them back to then help instigate other plays. Beautiful. Breaksword. I mean, what more needs to be said about Breaksword? The second this came out in Wing Raiders as well. Beautiful card. Absolutely love it. So, so good. 2 level 3, so nice and generic. Once per turn, detach material from this card. Target 1 card you control and 1 card your opponent controls. As cost, destroy them. If this XYZ summon card is destroyed, you can target 2 Phantom Knight monsters with the same level in the graveyard. Special summon them, but increase their levels by 1. Now, this one isn't optional. You do have to increase their levels, but you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Darks. Keep that in mind. That is very important that you lock yourself into Darks. It's not the end of the world because you still make the plays you need to make both ways, because you're going into Verte. Verte then goes into Dragoon, which are both Dark, or you go into Rider's Knight, which then allows you to go into Requiem or Arc Rebellion Dragon. So you've got plays to make. The card is insane, and keep in mind that you don't even need to trigger his own effect. When you summon it to a zone that Bardiche points to, Bardiche can then trigger to pop it. You bring back the 2, and then straight away what you're doing is ultimately turning your rank 3 into a rank 4. Speaking of rank 4s, we do run 3 rank 4s. Sorry, can't count. 4 rank 4s. We've got the one Evil Swan Nightmare, just very, very good and defensive. It's basically I say quick effect. It's not really a quick effect, it's a trigger effect of Book of Moon. So 2 level 4 Dark monsters, so it's coming off the back of Breaksword. And then when your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, you can detach 1 material from this card, change that special summon monster or monsters to face down defense position. So it's not a once per turn, so if you were able to attach more materials to it, you could do, but you can't. But the idea behind this, again, this is where the quick play Phantom Knight rank up comes in, is you Book of Moon 2 of your opponent's monsters. If they're still able to go, you quick effect, turn this into a rank 5, and then that gives you Arc Rebellion to negate everything, or gives you a Dark Requiem that has the ability to negate again. And then off the back of that, you're going to have your Appaloosa, which is going to sit there going, you know what, I'm going to absorb this up, and I'm going to negate everything that comes my way. Raiders Knight, literally just 2 level 4 Dark monsters. This guy is always treated as a Phantom Knight and Raid Raptor card. I love the artwork. Like, it's just Like, it looks so menacing. Like, when I saw the artwork, when it was officially first released, I was like, nah, this can't be a Yu-Gi-Oh card. This looks like too, like, not fantasy. It looks fantasy, but it looked like more like I don't want to be offensive to those that don't like Magic, but it looked more like a fantasy Magic card. But we knew it was a Raid Raptor card because it's got the Raid Raptor around the neck, and it just looks so dark and menacing. I was like, yes! Like, this is something that I wouldn't see in an anime. This is something I would see on, like, Lord of the Rings, or it just looks so cool, and I was like, yeah, I love it. So, basically, you detach your material from this card, special from your extra deck, one Phantom Knight, or the Phantom Knight specifically, Raid Raptor, or XYZ Dragon XYZ that is 1 rank higher. So I'm hoping we're going to get a Phantom Knight that is a rank 5, which would be sick. Using this card as material, but destroy it during your opponent's next end phase. This is treated as an XYZ summon, transfer all the materials to this card, and you can only use the effect once per turn. So the one thing is you're going to lose it during the end phase, but you're just ranking it up anyway, so you're going to get the job done. Dark Rebellion XYZ, the official first Starlight Rare, just saying, alongside Tiger King. But yeah, this is just another Rebellion Dragon that you can just go into, beef, steal half your opponent's monster's attack, then rank on top, steal even more, and pretty much go for game there. Redoer, chances are you're going to be making this with the trap. Is the only time you want to make it is with your Brigadine, because then you're going to get a bounce, and he's just going to constantly loop himself, which is really, really cool, and give you a lot of consistency. And then you got the Mac Daddy boss monsters in Requiem and Rebellion. Now, these can, of course, become access code talker if you have them. The focus has gone out, I don't know why. Come on, come back, focus. There we go. No. Okay. There we go. So, Requiem is your defensive, Arc Rebellion is your offensive, so do not worry about the fact that they both require 2 or 3 level 5 monsters, because you're always going to use them as rank up materials. So, the Dark Requiem XYZ, once per turn you can detach 1 material from this card, target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, change its attack to 0, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to that monster's original attack. This card, if this card has Dark Rebellion XYZ as material, it gains these effects. You have to have it have Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon as material, which again is very easy to do, and then you gain the additional effects. And what the more important one is, during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, detach 1 material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, then special summon 1 XYZ monster from your graveyard. Now, that is not a once per turn. The second effect is not once per turn, which is really important. Is technically, by the time you've made this, you're going to have 2 materials on your Dark Rebellion Dragon, plus your Dark Rebellion Dragon, so you're already going to have 3 materials. It gives you 3 negates. Straight away, by detaching material, you can bring back Breaksword, you can bring back the Dark Rebellion Dragon, and you just keep on going. It's just absolutely nuts, and it works out really, really nicely. Now, just to confirm as well, Dark Rebellion, no, Phantom Knight and the Raid Raptor, which is absolutely fine. And then your Aggressor, which does the job just as well. This XYZ summon card cannot be destroyed by card effect. Nice. You can detach 1 material from this card. This card's attack gains attack equal to the total original attack of all other monsters on the field. Then, if this card has a Dark XYZ monster as material, negate the effects of all other face-up monsters on the field. After this effect resolves, you cannot declare an attack with other monsters for the rest of this turn. You can only use the effect once per turn. Now, this should be a one-shot. And chances are, you're either going to switch off all your opponent's monsters with Forbidden Droplet, and then this card's going to come onto the board, and then it gains the attack of the original attack of the monsters as well. So keep that in mind, is even if they're half under Droplet, this guy's just going to go, right, I take all the original attack, beef himself up to a massive boss monster, even with your monsters as well, and it just goes one-shot smack the game. So, you know, nuts. And if you're not able to finish the game, and I don't know how you wouldn't be able to, but then you just go, right, cool, Zeus. And then they're going to be like, so I guess that's it. And if you've got any Fog Blades that are not dead, but Fog Blades that are unequipped, basically, but haven't fallen to the grave, you send them to the grave. Even if you have Fog Blades that are equipped, you send them to the grave, and then you have the ability to pretty much recur your entire board, because whatever Zeus has sent, as long as they're Phantom Knights, you just go, banish Fog Blade, bring it back, banish Fog Blade, bring it back. Like, you just go again. It's absolutely bananas and absolutely crazy. Like, the synergies on these decks is nuts, and I absolutely love Phantom Knights, like I said, and I think the Art Rebellions just add more to it, and these both look beautiful. I'm actually a little bit disappointed in this one's Ultimate Rare, because I thought the Stained Glass would pop a little bit more, but from what I've seen, they just don't look, it doesn't look as good. But anyway, I'm now talking about the art of the cards rather than just how to play the deck as well. Anyway, that was it for the deck profile. I'm now going to reset the board state and show you a very, very basic 2-card combo for the deck that will get you started and you kind of just show you the power level that this deck has, because trust me, it is nuts. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the 2-card combo. Now, of course, you want to open up with two of the most broken cards in the entire deck, Tour Guide and Fogblade. Now, there are other ways that this combo adapts depending on what you get, but it then means that the rest of your hand needs to be quite specific. This is literally just these 2 cards and free of any card in the entire game in your hand gets you the plays. So, what you want to do is you want to normal summon your Tour Guide. Tour Guide's effect will trigger, and that will then allow you to special from your deck Graph. Now, Graph won't be destroyed because obviously it's protected by Tour Guide's effect by negating Graph's effect on the field. What you're going to do is you're going to link those two together. You're going to go into the Cherubini, your Angel. I'm going to put Cherubini here and we'll put the spells and traps down here. Cherubini's effect will then trigger to send send from your deck to the graveyard your Ancient Cloak. This will then allow you... obviously, you need to trigger the Graph effect as well. So Graph will spring out the Seer. Seer will go to a zone that Cherubini points to so it doesn't nuke itself. But obviously it is a Burn Abyss, you're fine anyway. You're then going to link these two together as they are both darks and they equal a link 3. So you're going to be able to summon out your Phantom Knight of Rusty Bardiche. You'll then trigger Seer's effect to bring back away from a link zone just for safety your one Cherubini Abon Angel. Now, from this point, what you want to do is you want to use the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche's effect to send from your deck to the graveyard your Torn Scales. This will then allow you to set a Phantom Knight of Fogblade from your deck already. So then you're set up with one and you're good to go from there. Then what you want to do is you want to banish your Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak from your graveyard to search yourself out a Phantom Knights of Boots. Because a card was banished from your graveyard, or a Phantom Knight was banished from the graveyard, you're going to be able to summon out or add out your Torn Scales from the graveyard. You're then going to use Torn Scales effect to send a Phantom Knight card, being the Fogblade. Now, specifically Fogblade because it's a banish to revive, so it is an additional extender. But if you do have other cards in your hand, then you can then adapt to search or send this Fogblade as well. So what that will allow you to do is that will then allow you to send another Phantom Knight card from your deck to your grave. So you're going to send the wings just as an additional extension. You could send gloves and gloves would do the exact same thing for you. Then what you're going to do here is you're going to special summon down your boots and you're going to overlay your boots and your Torn Scales into the Sea Dragon. Now, you don't need to. You could go Breaksword and probably try and cut this combo a little bit short, but I'm trying to show you the full combo extent of where you're going from here. You're then going to detach the Torn Scales. Now, by doing that, your Torn Scales go back to the graveyard as it's being detached as a material, and you get to summon back your banished Cloak. Then what you want to do is you want to use your Sea Dragon, your Cloak, and your Cherubini, and this is going to get you into a free negate Appaloosa, protecting everything else you do from this point on. Now, the one very risky thing for your opponent in regards to a deck like this is the fact that there is never really a massive choke point because the graveyard sometimes is always going to be loaded. So, for example, in this one, if they were to Nibiru us as we tried to make this play, we would still have the ability of banishing the wings and, of course, the blade to summon 2 back, which is exactly what we're going to do. So it doesn't matter which 2 you bring back because they're going to end up straight in the graveyard, but we're going to bring back Cloak and our Torn Scales, and we're going to overlay them straight away and go into our Phantom Knights of Breaksword. That will then trigger, because a Dark XYZ has been summoned to a zone Rusty points to pop Breaksword, and basically what we're doing here is we're just trying to rank these up. So Breaksword will then trigger to summon back the Cloak and the Torn Scales, but this time they're going to be as level 4s. Now, this is where you have the ability to adapt your plays depending on what you're facing, depending on the route you want to go. Now, if you want a second Fogblade, then what you can do is you can actually turn these into either Verte and then go into Dragoon, depending on if you've got the hand advantage and if you've opened up the Red Eyes or Dark Magician or anything like that. You can overlay them and go into a Raider's Knight, and then Raider's Knight will then allow you to rank up. But to be honest, if you're not having Dark Rebellion as a material, there's no point in going into Requiem Dragon. So the route play that I would actually go if you don't want to go into Verte is I'd go into Nightmare. Now, the reason I'd go into Nightmare on this particular play is I would actually then use the ability of Boots in the graveyard to banish to add me a Phantom Knight spell or trap. Now, the one that I'd actually go for in this particular scenario would be the Phantom Knights of Rank Up. Now, the reason I go with that is I'm then going to set that. Now, obviously, if I've got more in my hand to set, my opponent's not going to know that this is one of the sets. I could hold on to this and completely do a little bit of misdirection for your opponent. But What you're now doing is, during your opponent's turn, as you play through it, you've got 3 negates on Appaloosa that they've got to play through. You've then got 2 Book of Moons off of the back of your Nightmare. Now, obviously, if your opponent Dark Rulers you or Droplets you, that's fine, because you've still got a Fog Blade to fall back on, and you've still got the Quick Play. So this would just actually be better for you, because it would actually keep you with more material. Now, let me just double check this. Banish 1 or more Dark Monsters from your grave. Target 1 die XYZ you control. From your extra deck, 1 Phantom Knights, Rave Raptor, XYZ Dragon with whose ranks equal that target monster you control plus the number of banished monsters by using them as material. Okay, fine. So, if you wanted to keep materials on this, great. But if you've used both materials, which is technically 5 interruptions by the time you've ended up using the Appaloosas as well, you trigger the rank up and you want to banish 1 from the graveyard. Now, you only need to banish 1 dark, so you might as well banish a Tour Guide. What this is going to allow you to do is go into a rank 5. Now that rank 5 could be your Dark Requiem, but probably more times than not, it's going to be your Ark Rebellion XYZ. Now by doing that, what that's then going to trigger is this will then trigger to negate all of your opponent's monster effects, but it will also allow you to trigger the Bardiche because a Dark XYZ is summoned to a zone it points to. So that's then going to give you a pop. So you've technically ended up turning up 5 disruptions into 6 disruptions plus an internal board turn-off. Plus you still have the Fog Blade and the other 3 cards in your hand doing whatever you want. Not to mention that then, in the rest of your graveyard, you've got Cloak to go again for the next turn, and then by using Cloak the next turn, you also have the ability to bring back Torn Scales, and then Scales can then go again, not to mention if Fog Blade then hits the graveyard, that then brings back another Revival. So from 2 cards, you've been able to pretty much shut your opponent down. Now the 2 cards aren't massively specific in that sense, because throughout the rest of the plays, rest of the combos and the rest of the moves, depending on what the rest of your hand is like, you actually have the ability of using that to kind of build the exact same board on a consistent basis in order to kind of stun your opponent and put up Omni Negates. Now, in that exact example, if you wanted to be a bit more aggressive, that's probably where, instead of Appaloosa, you could make an access code, but you're not going to have enough in the graveyard. It'll probably be better off with a Boral Sword. But then the XYZ that you make would then just be Raider's Knight going into the Ark Rebellion Dragon, which is then just going to absorb all the attack on the board anyway and go for a one-shot punch to your opponent. Keeping in mind that at that point, whether you made Sword or not, or even if you kept them as 3 separate entities, as long as you had the ability to make the Ark Rebellion, what that's then going to do is absorb all of their power plus the 21 of Bardiche, and it's definitely going to be enough to just one-shot your opponent. So you don't even need to overextend sometimes. You can just keep it very short, sweet and simple, and to the point more times than not, and that will actually end up winning you the game as well. And that's what's so good about Phantom Knights, is they've got so many different routes to OTK you. They've got so many different ways of recurring from the graveyard, from the hand, from the deck. And then they've got that nice balance, which is what's needed in this current meta of they don't need to, right, if I lose the dice roll, I'm not going to be able to play through any stall cards. For example, in this scenario, if they were to face Bird Up, yes, Bird Up is a pain in the backside, but if you're able to get to your Fog Blades are then going to be able to turn them off. So it's not a lost dice roll, lost the game. It's going to be a lost dice roll. This is going to be a bit of a grind if they do something like that, but I can still come out on top with the greatest of ease. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's given you a couple of ideas on your own particular build for Phantom Knights. I definitely advise everyone to build them. I know that at this moment in time, the Torn Scales are going to be a little bit expensive, so I'm not surprised if you're like, oh, I'm a budget player, I'm not going to go out my way to do it. Perfectly fine. I would still advise, now you can't replace Torn Scales for like, but you can definitely try and get close by increasing your cloaks and your boots, and going for more cards like Twin Twisters, Foolish Burials, stuff like that, just to get to that level. But right now, while we're under lockdown, I definitely advise you building Phantom Knights, at least online, to test out and have a play around with, because I really love the deck. I think it's so good, and it's got so many different varieties. That is what makes it so good. Like the previous version I did for you guys was a Utopia Kaiser version, and I love that version. That version was pretty cool, and you can still play that even without the influence from Union Carrier now. You just don't lock your opponent out of the extra deck. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Until next time, guys, as absolutely always, stay safe and happy dueling.